Nick, you got any kind of guess as to how many books of canon books are in the Oz? Yeah, books.
20.
No, it's too low.
That's too low?
That's too low.
We're not doing. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do that. This is now an Oz Universe podcast. We will no longer be talking about anything else. It'll take us 4 years to go through 40 books.
Hello and welcome to May the Review Be With You with Nick and Joe. I'm Joe.
I'm Nick. Welcome everybody to Ozfest. Today we are talking about 3 beloved Wizard of Oz Ozverse films. Of course, the original Wizard of Oz. We're talking about Oz the Great and Powerful. And then more recently, Wicked. Can't leave out Wicked. So we're going to go through all 3 of these films, talk about, what we liked, what we didn't like, some similarities, some of the differences. And we're going to kick things off. Joe, where are we starting?
If ever there was a Wiz, there was the Wizard of Oz is one because, dude. That has been ringing in my head for like a solid week now.
No, see, I've been defying gravity for a couple days, so.
You tell me which is a catchier tune, to be honest. I mean, Defying Gravity, way more impressive vocals, but goddamn, they knew how to make an earworm back in 1939.
Oh, man. Listen, 1939, the damn movie still holds up. It's freaking fantastic. Now, granted, it's weird as hell.
Oh yeah, there's no denying that.
That film, it's weird. It's the weirdest one of all of them. Maybe it's because it was the first one, but Wizard of Oz, 1939, the OG, strange. What a strange film.
As Nick said, it is Ozfest. We're diving into all of these beloved movies. Well, at least 2 of them are beloved. I actually don't know about Oz the Great and Powerful, how beloved that is universally, but we are going to dive into it as part of Ozfest. But before we do, Nick, just talking about Oz in general, real quick here. I don't know how many people know this. If you are an Oz fan, you probably are very aware of this. But if The Wizard of Oz and Wicked are about as far as you go, it might surprise you, as it did me, to find out just how many Oz books there are. Nick, you got any kind of guess as to how many books of canon books are in the Oz? Yeah, books.
20.
No, it's too low.
That's too low?
That's too low.
We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do that. If there's 20 books and we're talking about 3 movies, that means, well, there's probably more movies than we even can get. How many books are there, Joe?
So canonical books,
okay.
40. There are 40 canonical books. And not all of them are by Frank Braun, the original writer. I think like 14 of them or so are. But
this is crazy.
His family and like other folks that were trusted with the with the property added to all of that. There are non-canon books that keep the lore going in crazy ways from what I understand. Oz is just however big you think Oz is, it's bigger than that, it's certainly bigger than I ever realized.
That's insane. This is now an Oz Universe podcast. We will no longer be talking about anything else. It'll take us 4 years to go through 40 books plus the non-canon ones.
If there are any Oz fans, like true diehard Oz fans that are listening to this, just tell us, what are the best books in the series? Which ones should we actually read? I went through summaries just on Wikipedia really quick, just skimming through them. It did not seem like all of them were winners. I'm not trying to hurt any feelings. Let me know if I am wrong in the most gentle way that you can.
Yeah, listen.
Oz is freaking huge.
That's crazy.
So Frank Braun came out with the first book, 1900 is the first book. We fast forward into our first movie, The Wizard of Oz, 1939. And as Nick had pointed out, this movie, I think the best way to talk about this movie by reviewing it, Nick, is reviewing it in today's standards, as you were talking about. Because, what could honestly be said about this movie that hasn't already been freaking said? As a technological marvel of the end of the 30s and the beginning of the 40s, the Technicolor technique that was going on, it's truly a marvel. The set design, which Nick, I'm going to let you dive into that. I know that's your forte, is awesome. It still looks great. I'm going to get into some of my quips about just how this movie stacks up in the modern era in a little bit. But Nick, I'm going to turn over just the tech and the set design to you because I know that's your world.
Yeah. So great call. Like the Technicolor thing was obviously very revolutionary back then in 1939. Upon rewatching the film, it really is cool to see the beginning in that grayscale black and white, and then, of course, once Dorothy arrives in Oz, you just get this like splash of color that really hits you. And now we know that this is coming, right? We're rewatching this film. It had been a while since I'd seen it, but even though you know that you're about to get just wrecked with color,
yeah, that front door opening is still golden. It's golden.
It's still just wrecks you like in the coolest way, and it just immediately I'm like, man, it must have been so cool to watch this for the first time. Like it's such a awesome way,
right?
Yeah, it's such an awesome way to tell the story. Introduce like how much different this place is that Dorothy has like essentially like landed herself. Now, talking about some cool like effects, obviously 1939, not a lot of CGI and visual effects possible in 1939 from a computer standpoint. Let's just be obvious there. But
most people would have asked you what a computer is at that point.
Exactly. But some cool things. That tornado sequence at the beginning still holds up really cool. Like has like a little terrifying aspect to it. It's not Twister-esque, but it's close.
I almost wonder though. I did think about Twister because like the moment where you see the cow flying up. I was wondering like in retro like when Twister did that, was that a reference to the Wizard of Oz? Like it almost feels like it is.
Maybe we'll have to look that up. That's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of things that are probably seldomly a reference to Wizard of Oz. It was so iconic at the time. So
I mean, even still, right? It's one of the most influential movies in American cinema, maybe even world cinema of all time.
Yeah, it's really just like fantastic. And that tornado scene was done using a 35-foot muslin stocking. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but it's like a 35-foot stocking attached to a huge crane, which was mounted to a car that was on a track below. And then they were using like wind and dirt and smoke effects to create like the realistic swirling tornado. Like, I mean, just like ridiculous. Everything I just said doesn't even make sense because now you can just do it with CGI.
It is what, because like, all right, so like I really don't mean anything against digital designers. The things that they are able to create, truly amazing. Marvel, pay your goddamn designers. But the things that they were able to accomplish without computers, like the artistry,
artistry is increased when you have to stretch your brain a little bit.
Right. You were limited as to the things that you could do, and therefore, like the way that you had to accomplish it it just felt like the creative process was so much more impressive. I don't want it. I feel bad saying that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like today, like there's CGI and a lot of visual effects with computers that look awesome, and they help the films out. But there's something about the extra like work that it takes to build the sets and to think creatively about how to make something look real without just using a computer. And like those like sweat and tears from creators and designers like show through in the film, and the actors know that and they feel it too when they're on those sets. And like in 1939, they built Munchkinland. It was on like a back lot that was like 6.5 acres. Wild. They built this whole thing. It's like insane. Emerald City was created using like a combination of sets and like matte paintings, which like most of 1939 was done with like some sets on large scale, on small scale, and with paintings thrown in there. So like really cool. Like, and at times it almost felt like a play while you're watching this film, right? Because of how they were building these sets. And
hey, before you move on from that point, I would argue that like, yeah, it did feel like a play because like at the time, I think that's where like a lot of like artistry expertise came from, right? Like you can tell like so much of the actors, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who plays the Cowardly Lion, like especially really comes across as like a theatrical thespian.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, if it feels like you're watching a play, it's definitely because so many of those creatives came from that world.
A lot of backdrops, rear projection, things like that for sure. So, but it all really honestly, like, it still holds up. Like, there is a weirdness to the Wizard of Oz, which I think is by design. there's a strangeness there, but from an effects perspective, it's really well done, and it still holds up, and it makes it enjoyable to watch even now.
Yes, and just to harken on that history, just a teensy bit more. Um, I was not aware that when The Wizard of Oz first came out, it was nominated for Best Picture. It did not win. And really after its release, it really didn't have a huge traction or a huge following for a long time until the 1950s, when television became much more accessible to America. And that movie premiered in color and it was reintroduced to America. And it became this darling of American cinema on television. And it is today, apparently, the most watched film of all time. And like when I think about that,
It's crazy.
I think like as a child growing in the 90s, like I think about how often I would see The Wizard of Oz like playing on TNT or like ABC or CBS like all the time. Like Wizard of Oz was one of those things that I would never like I sat down, watched the whole thing once, but then like over years I would see different scenes of it
Right.
and just like have seen the movie multiple times as a result of that.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Did not realize it was the most watched of all time. That makes
Yeah.
sense though. But man, like it was like required viewing when we were growing up. But like
It was.
is it still required viewing? You know, like what are people watching now?
Right.
Are they just
yeah.
watching Wicked? Like I would love to know what the younger people like, what's a 14-year-old? Are they like being forced to watch the original Wizard of Oz? Like, or are they kicking and screaming as they're like hitting play?
Yeah, no, that's a great
like-
question. I want to believe that I mean, like, I think that this movie is still incredibly watchable by today's standards.
Agreed.
And I almost wonder, like, how many parents, like, have their kids watch this movie. It is so influential, right? And, like, you can see, like, little references of it across all media, but, like, huge references of it, too, right? Like,
Yep.
we just saw Agatha All Along back in October.
Right.
And, like, most of that was referencing the Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
right?
All play on Wizard of Oz. Yep. So huge
Yeah.
in pop culture still, for sure.
It's huge. Okay, so comparing it by modern day standards, yeah, it's still extremely watchable. But man, you were not kidding, Nick. This movie's so freaking weird. It's so much weirder than I remembered.
Insane.
It's insane. It's honestly insane. There are like, and it's like, it's the little things. It's the little things
Yes.
that come off as like insane. Like, for example, Cowardly Lion, when the Wizard of Oz, Big Head, tells them they gotta go kill the witch, right? Just go kill the witch, right? Which already, like, okay. Dorothy's supposed to be a 10-year-old girl, which, like, all right, real quick before I get on the insanity here. Dorothy. Judy Garland, darling. She is Dorothy. I absolutely love her as Dorothy. But, like, I find it so funny that Dorothy's supposed to be a 10-year-old girl. Judy Garland is 16. Apparently, Shirley Temple was supposed to play Dorothy at 10 years old. The deal didn't go through. So they gave it to Judy Garland, who was 16. They did not rewrite the part for a 16-year-old girl. And you can tell, because they all treat her like she's this baby. And it's wild to me that, like, this grown, almost grown woman
Strange.
is being handled like she's glass.
Strange.
Anyway, yeah, so tell the girl made of glass to go freaking kill the witch. Cowardly Lion jumps out the window in response to this. Do you remember? He runs from the wizard and jumps out the window. And the very next scene, it's the four of them just walking in the
Yeah.
forest as if that didn't just happen.
No big deal.
No big deal. Also, what I love about that, when they're walking, they're all armed. Scarecrow is carrying a pistol. He's holding an actual gun. This movie, I assume this movie was meant to be funny. God damn, that is hysterical.
Yeah, ridiculous. Also, you mentioning that she was supposed to be, that they didn't rewrite it for a 16-year-old. That made the beginning scene with the fortune teller even creepier.
Right.
Like, so creepy. But back to like the gang of travelers here on the Yellow Brick Road. Tin Man, the scene where he needs oil and they're like, we got to put oil like to make him move. Like, I love that scene, and I think the Tin Man's probably my favorite of all those characters. But it's just such a strange, so strange, like what's like the like how did he even get there? Like, why are we putting oil on this? I don't like. Give me the why.
I will say, even as a kid, I've always loved the sound effect that they used for the oil drum
Oh
as
my
it's
God.
like pumping
Yeah.
glop, 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 like that. Like I don't know why. There's something about that like tickles my brain like
Yeah.
perfectly.
Oh my goodness. And then Munchkin
um,
Land, like super impressive set, like we already talked about, but like so weird. And it doesn't get like less weird
no,
throughout the years
it
when they
doubles down,
when they make
honestly.
the other movies. Like it gets weirder,
Mm,
like which we'll get to those, but
yeah, if we're looking at just like things in the movie that we think maybe could have been better, maybe that's unfair to apply that criticism from 2025.
right,
But to be fair, there's really not much I would criticize in this movie. My biggest thing is like sometimes the way it cuts, the scenes are a little jagged,
right,
right? Like, someone will be facing this direction and then it'll cut to a scene and they're all of a sudden over here,
right,
right? But like, I don't know, it kind of gets a pass, I guess, because it's
yeah.
1939. They're
It's
still
like
evolving film techniques,
right.
right?
It's like a 1939 problem. Like that's just how they couldn't do anything else.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And
yeah,
I imagine doing reshoots back then must have been
right,
even worse
yeah,
than trying to do that now.
yeah. Forget about it. But yeah, like not really a lot of like improvement notes either. I mean, it's too old and iconic to like they should have done this, they should have done that. Like
I
it's
think it really comes down to the digestibility of this film, and like I think the older this movie gets, the weirder it becomes,
yes,
which almost makes it more lovable.
maybe, yeah. Although I will say, like, I don't think I'll ever understand why Dorothy wanted to go home. I mean, they try to tell you that like it's about she's gonna miss her loved ones and her family, but like, listen, you spend that much time in Oz, and then you want to go back to Kansas where there's tornadoes in that small ass house with like 7 relatives. Ain't no way. As we'll find out in the next film, Oz had it right. End up in Oz. Don't go back to Oklahoma or Kansas or wherever the hell you're from in the Midwest.
I'm so glad you brought this up because it was the first time I've ever watched this movie, and this thought had occurred to me. Where she wakes up, of course, and the no place like home, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there, right? Like we all know that scene very well. And she does the whole like, and I love all of you, which I do think it's funny that the fortune teller is there and she says that. But in any case, I I would have loved it if Elmira Gulch, who like the mirrored comparison is the Wicked Witch of the West, right? If Elmira Gulch just shows up in the window at the very end and she's like, "Even me?" And Dorothy's like, "No, you tried to kill my dog." And Elmira's like, "That's right. That plot point hasn't been resolved yet. I still have to kill your dog."
Well, there's your answer for what could be improved. There's a massive plot hole in the original Wizard of Oz.
The movie just decides to end at one point. It's just like, we're done. We are done.
Listen, this is really all Toto's fault, though, if I'm being honest. Like the whole thing, right? Like Toto didn't jump out of the basket to run back home.
Well, it starts with Toto biting Elmira, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do that. Sounds like Dorothy's got to get Toto under control,
Yeah,
honestly.
sounds like this whole thing is Toto's fault.
Yeah, or Auntie M, like maybe don't let the 10-year-old girl who looks like a 16-year-old girl run free with this wild dog. I don't know. That sounds like bad dog ownership.
All right, well now we're getting into nitpicking territory.
That's what we do here.
Oh my goodness. All right.
But yeah, Wizard of Oz, it stands the test of time. I hope
Yep.
it always will.
Yep.
It is an icon for a reason.
100%. But now, switching gears to our next film in the Ozfest celebration, Oz the Great and Powerful. Year released? I forgot.
2013.
2013. Oz the Great and Powerful, starring James Franco, Mila Kunis.
Directed by Sam Raimi?
Directed by Sam Raimi. When I saw that, I forgot. I was like, what?
Anyone listening, be honest. Do you remember this movie? Did you go see this movie? like, tell us, please. Because, like, I remember the trailers for this movie. I did not see it. And I don't know anyone who did. I don't know a single person who went to go see this movie.
Same. Yep. I never watched it. First time was this past weekend for this. Blown away completely in the opening credits with the Sam Raimi thing. I was like, what? Made me excited to watch it. And I think, and overall, like, I didn't like hate it, you know, like, but I was viewing it more in the lens of like exploring the Land of Oz a little bit more. There are a handful of differences, of course, between some of the storyline here in Oz the Great and Powerful and the Wizard of Oz. There's even more between Oz the Great and Powerful and Wicked, which we'll get to probably closer to when we discuss Wicked. But so I'd say probably more inconsistencies in this movie out of the three, I think. Unless, of course, you consider this movie the most canon, in which case then everything else is inconsistent. So I don't know if you have any details on books there and what's canon and what's not out of this movie, but
so I don't know. So of the original 40, I don't. So I was looking specifically for like Wicked or Oz the Great and Powerful, right? In the original 40, and like from what I could tell, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think it is. I think both of those stories, and we'll get more into Wicked later, both of those stories are, at least Wicked for sure, based on a book that was published well outside of the original 40. And I think maybe there is a non-canonical book outside of the original 40 that is Oz the Great and Powerful, but like I couldn't tell like how similar or different it was to the movie. It kind of seems like they went rogue on this one.
Love it. Which what was cool was like exploring like how did the wizard get there, right? Because obviously such a big plot point in Wizard of Oz, like getting to meet the wizard, and so it was really cool that this one's really focused on how Oz got to the Land of Oz. One of the cool things that was kind of similar, right, that Sam Raimi, I'm assuming, did for the purposes of like, you know, flashing back to the original, was kind of starting this movie in that same kind of grayscale black and white, right? Less color. And we don't really get color until Oz gets to the Land of Oz.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Nick. This was actually something that made me mad about this movie. This is something that made me mad. Yeah. I'm going to get on my soapbox right now. I'm going to rant about this real quick. All right. So let me ask you, Nick, the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, is it in black and white?
Well, I don't think it's technically black and white. It's like
it's not black and white.
It's,
and it's not shot in black and white either.
It's like a grayscale, like I forget what it's called. It's like
it's a sepia tone.
Yes.
It's a sepia tone.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's like it's it's desaturated of color, right? But it's not colorless, right? And like I think part of the reason for that is like, you know, to give that Kansas like that dirt look, that farm dirt look, right? To make it look like even poorer, right? Because like at the end of the day, I think that's what like Oz is supposed to be this like mirror of like our world, right? But like where everything's different and more vibrant, right? And I don't know, it just kind of felt like they were like, oh, it's supposed to be old timey, right? Not dirty, like old timey. And I was like, that I feel like you guys are kind of missing the point here. You guys are like trying to like pull some nostalgia here, but like it's not working. I don't know. I got mad at it.
All right, Joe, didn't work for Joe, the nostalgia there at the beginning of The Great and Powerful. In any case, it happened. I do think that it's interesting that Oz is also technically not from Kansas. I think it was Oklahoma, but he did Omaha, thank you. He did spend some time in Kansas in his history that we found out. I think it was in the original that we
he says it in Oz that I was a Kansas man myself, young lady.
Right. So there's some similarities there. Of course, he arrived, you know, and then of course the way he gets there is basically a tornado, just like Dorothy. In this case, he's in a hot air balloon, which is completely ridiculous, but fun. And yeah, that's like the beginning there, right? What do you got? Where do you want to get? Where do you want to go? Do you want me to hit some more practical effects here from Great and Powerful?
Yeah. Let's talk practicality.
So
Nick, what looks better, Oz the Great and Powerful or the Wizard of Oz? Go.
I think Oz the Great and Powerful,
You're wild.
but not by that much, which is crazy. Like
It just looks more modern, right? That's really all it looks like.
More modern. Now, to the credit of Oz the Great and Powerful, they did build 7 full sets, full size set.
I didn't know that.
Including Munchkin City, Glinda's Castle, the Whimsy Woods. They did this to help provide like the actors with like some tangible environments to interact with. So they did build like some full sets, which is really cool. And I think it shows like in the movie, right? In addition to that, though, as you can imagine, between 2013 and 1939, quite a lot of effects and digital visual effects have been created. And so Oz the Great and Powerful contained around 1,500 visual effects shots. That's quite a lot.
Wow.
So they, of course, use this like CG characters, 3D cinematography, visual effects, like all that stuff. So there's also that part of it, right? I think another cool part is the China girl in The Great and Powerful was actually a like puppeteer. And they had like a couple different like facial expressions that she could use.
For the record, anyone who is listening to this right now and you haven't watched Oz the Great and Powerful, I do just want to preface the fact that Nick is not being insensitive here. That is indeed the character's name. Is the China girl.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with being from China. It is because she is a China porcelain doll.
Yes.
Which actually was pretty cool.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification, Joe, so I don't get canceled.
I got you, man.
But yes, so that's just like a handful of like the kind of overview of the effects and visual effects. But that's one thing that I love about this franchise and this universe is that in all the movies they really do bring in like the practical versions of it, right? They're building sets, even in Wicked, which we'll get to. They're building sets. And in my opinion, and I think the opinion of this podcast, is that when you can build stuff for real, it just helps all parties involved like get immersed in the world. That includes the actors, that includes the people watching, that includes us. And so really cool that they actually built that many sets in 2013. So that's kind of just a quick overview. What I'll throw it back to you for what you want to talk about next as far as Great and Powerful is concerned.
I guess I want to talk about just like, because we haven't really talked about like what we gave like a very, very, very fast summary of what this story is. And as you had mentioned, Nick, it is the story of how Oz comes to the land of Oz, which he just happens to share the same name as the land. We come into conflict with our two witches, the wicked witches of the East and West. There is a bit of a twist, which I appreciate the movie trying to do. I don't think it sticks the land. Honestly, it's kind of really laughable.
Yeah.
The twist. I didn't see it coming, but like it did make me laugh a lot, and I don't think I was supposed to laugh.
Oh, this is one thing that I did not like about visual effects or makeup or whatever.
Oh gosh, yeah, this was bad.
The Wicked Witch of the West looked horrible. Like, yeah. 1939
I think in general was miscast, but like also it did not help that the effects for her were bad.
It looked so bad. It was like funny ugly, not good.
No.
Really too much.
Yeah, the Wicked Witch of the West from 1939 looks amazing
compared
in any era, and by God, especially compared to the 2013 version.
1000%. The twist, I don't think it landed either. It was cool. I think the cooler part was I really did appreciate towards the end, the ending scene where, Oz comes up with this like grand plan to essentially like trick the sisters into thinking he is this like powerful wizard. Like that was really cool to see, like the resourcefulness and the showmanship and entertainmentship and the conmanship that he has, right? Because that kind of lets you believe where he could like go to in his future with Oz, right? Which is of course what we end up seeing in The Wizard of Oz, and then like some more backstory we got from him helped us kind of like understand where he was or what he does like in the movie like Wicked, right? And so we kind of got like this main backstory, and we really got to see him in action, which I thought was really cool.
I do agree with that. I think a lot of the performances in this movie fall really flat. James Franco, however, I don't think his lines are always written very well, but like he's just always kind of a delight to watch. He's very charming, especially in this role. And I think he was pretty good at, being the stranger in a strange land and kind of fumbling his way through it, and then watching him get to flex his muscles as a con man in the end. I do enjoy the idea of that. I think it works for like what we know Oz to be later, especially getting to watch the evolution of the big giant head, right? That was really neat.
Right.
For the record, the twist that we are referencing is Oz arrives. He is told by two leaders of Oz, two women, that he has to go kill the Wicked Witch in order to become the King of Oz, as it is prophesized. But it turns out the Wicked Witch is actually Glenda. And the two women that he was talking to are actually the Wicked Witches, to which we get to watch the evolution of the Wicked Witch of the West become green, and it's dumb, and it's basically she feels spurned by the fact that Oz flirted with another girl.
Yeah.
And like that's why she becomes wicked.
Yeah, and her own sister is the one that like makes this possible and betrays her anyway. So it's just like a whole it's jumbled and not very well done
weak.
And weak and stupid, honestly.
It's stupid. Also, I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I think this movie, even though I don't think that I think this movie is like it's not good by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't have a bad time watching it.
Right.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah,
it was kind of fun.
I enjoyed it on it, and also Finley, the flying monkey assistant,
Zach Braff,
best character of the movie.
Agreed. He was the funniest. You know what's funny? Zach Braff in the beginning of this movie, when he's his human character, I distinctly remember thinking, "Wow, this is not a good performance by Zach Braff. This is really bad." And then like as soon as he's the mirrored, animated monkey, all of a sudden delightful and like the best character.
Right.
It's like I guess he was supposed to be playing like a muted version of that, but like man, does it not hit very well in the beginning. But like later, Zach Braff gets to be full Zach Braff, and it's great.
Right. I mean, he probably read the script and was like, "I love this Finley character. This idiot at the beginning, I don't care for, but we'll make it through."
What I wanted to say though was this movie basically has, of the three movies we are talking about, the worst iterations of the characters who appear consistently in all these movies.
Yes.
The worst Wicked Witch, the worst, I feel bad about saying it, but the worst Oz, and the worst by far the worst Glenda. Not even close.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there. It leaves a lot to be desired, for sure, from a character's point. But like overall, the movie's enjoyable. Like,
yeah, no, I would agree with that.
And if you're a fan of the Ozverse, like, you should watch this movie because it is fun and it is cool to see like the origin story of how Oz got to the land of Oz. Now, it leaves some questions, right? Like when he gets there, there's this prophecy that the wizard is going to come and save the land of Oz, and he arrives and they think he's the wizard, and maybe he is what the prophecy is saying, but if he's not, then who is the wizard actually supposed to be that's supposed to come and save everyone? Not sure. This is the only film where we also hear about any sort of prophecy, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is the only film out of the three we're talking about where Oz is not originally already in the land of Oz. So
right.
It leaves some questions on that end from a canon perspective.
I think one of the reasons why this movie like doesn't hit for me is The Wizard of Oz, even though I think a lot of like the lines or maybe a lot of moments from back then weren't supposed to be necessarily funny back then,
right?
And they are funny now, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It was still always written as a fun, whimsical adventure, whereas like a lot of Great and Powerful feels like it's supposed to be this epic thing, and I just don't feel like overall that's a great look for at least this cinema series, right?
Yeah.
At least for the tone that's set originally.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Two more real quick hits.
Yeah.
More like I think Sam Raimi trying to like pay homage to the original. They had like that Strawberry Fields
yes,
reference there at the end of this one, which was a clear reference to the original Wizard of Oz with, or it's Strawberry Fields, Sleeping Fields.
Yeah.
Strawberry
Poppy
Fields
Fields.
Forever. That's a Beatles song. Sleeping Fields. So that was like, paying some more homage. That was, I think it worked well. It was cool. Right. There's another part where like they show the con man and the wizard and the craftsmanship of Oz, right, and his resourcefulness about like, getting the group together to build these like figurines. And then one weird throw-in scene that I was like, why is this in the movie? Is him basically swimming through gold and like jumping up and down in the gold, like Scrooge McDuck.
I forgot about this.
That was like so cringe and
As if he's Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Like,
yeah, that was so bad.
Why are we Scrooge McDucking this scene right now? Like, this is not necessary.
Yeah, that was painful. That really was. I think I deleted that scene from my memory.
Yeah, it was horrible. But that's all the notes I have. Overall, I think it's worth watching in the Ozverse just to get some backstory on how he got there.
If you ever needed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, without further ado, let's get to the main attraction of this podcast. We are talking about 2024's John Chu's Wicked.
Part 1.
Which I am told, yeah, Wicked Part 1, which I am told is popular. I'm so sorry.
Popular?
I'm so sorry.
All right, you're gone. I'm going to do the rest of the show myself. Joe's canceled.
Talk about catchy tunes.
God.
Wow. Wicked.
Wicked.
So
that's a film.
That's a film. I mean,
Spectacle.
all right. So I was never lucky enough to watch the Broadway performance of this. Were you?
Nope.
No. I only know a handful of people who were. From everything I've heard from anyone who saw it live, they loved the hell out of the performance, right? And as far as people who their introduction to Wicked was the theater, right? Or if their introduction to Wicked was this movie, most people I talked to really loved what they saw. The people who read the book, however, did not seem as on board. So real quick note just about the book. If you don't know, Wicked, before it was a play, was a book. It came out in 95. It is written outside of the original 40 and outside of most chronology of The Wizard of Oz. I believe some diehard fans like really regarded this to be like either its own thing or it is part of the truth of Oz, right? But like the author's been dead for a long time, so like I guess up to you on where the chronology falls here. But Nick, and I'm sure you're going to bring this up, as far as the inconsistencies that we see in between stories, this is why. Because it's not originally part of any kind of plan,
Got it. That makes sense, because there are like a glaring amount of inconsistencies between Wicked specifically and the two films we just talked about. The original Wizard of Oz and Oz the Great and Powerful.
Pretty big inconsistencies too.
Yeah, that makes sense in why it would be outside of canon. The problem, as you're alluding to, is that this film is the pinnacle of the three, in my opinion. And so I'm pretty sure it splits the road down the middle here on do we care or do we not care? And which one do we prefer to believe? Which
I will say, I hear what you're saying as far as like the standout, right? And I do think, part of what it's got going for it is like that modern like flair.
Yeah.
However, that didn't help Oz the Great and Powerful.
True.
Yeah. But I will say what I think works great for this film as opposed to Oz the Great and Powerful is I think it really captures a lot of what made The Wizard of Oz such a like spirited film. Like not only is it touching on like on a lot of the themes that The Wizard of Oz touched on, your heart's desire and things of that nature, right?
Right.
Capturing the mirrored effect of things. But like it also pushed the bounds technologically speaking, right? That the last act alone, the last number, Defying Gravity, is a spectacle. I'd say the entire movie is worth watching just for Defying Gravity.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's a cinematography like marvel. It's beautiful. So like way to push the boundaries creatively on that.
Yeah. Absolute spectacle, really. And just to kind of like touch on some practical effects or visual effects here, just as an overview, for Wicked. of course, like heavily relied on. There was a lot of practical effects. They built tangible sets just like the other movies, which is awesome, rather than relying on CGI. This, of course, like really does come through. Like I think the sets and the visuals in Wicked are infinitely better than Oz the Great and Powerful. Like it really they really do a good job. So yeah, they build, like, of course, the real sets. The giant like animatronic head was like a puppeteer controlling it with like a hydraulic arm and everything to move that. So that's cool. That was like
There is a video of our two stars, Cynthia and Ariana, seeing the head for the first time as it comes out. They didn't know that was going to happen, and just go find it. It's the two of them freaking out as it comes out.
That's amazing. The other thing that's really cool is the Emerald City Express, which is like probably the most badass train that I've ever seen. 32-ton train built to actually run. So like
this thing was so cool.
It moved. Like,
yeah,
it moved for real. And then Munchkin Land specifically, 9 million tulips were planted to create the look of Munchkin Land.
Wow.
9 million. Insane. And then, of course, Shiz, 52-foot high set. Shiz was 52 feet, that set high. So, like, impressive scale, impressive set design to really make you feel immersed. And visual effects wise, 2,200 visual effects shot in total in this film. Comparatively, we talked about Great and Powerful at about 1,500. So, kind of makes sense. Bigger film, longer film. More visual effects in this one, but not too much more based on.
But you know, I gotta say, like, I'll applaud Great and Powerful for this. Like, at least both of these films, like, really tried to like harken back to like, I guess the movie magic of like what made The Wizard of Oz sing, right? Like building out those huge practical sets.
Yeah,
right?
And I mean, the world. It's The Wizard of Oz, the land of Oz, is so important that you need like the actors and actresses like to be able to actually be there and like interact with these sets to really like feel like they're in this world and to portray it correctly. And so it's awesome that the studios give them a bunch of money to do it, and they clearly got the right people because the sets here in Wicked were fantastic.
I was talking about this earlier about how the Wizard of Oz is a mirror to our world, right? And you know that's the way it's supposed to come across. That's why those characters, you know, the farm characters are also the characters that Dorothy comes across in her journey, right? It's like an inverted mirror, right? And what I really enjoyed about Wicked is it retains that without the use of the other world, right? Whereas like the inverted mirror, it's not being used as a point of looking at like our world. It's looked at through Dorothy's journey, right? Versus Elphaba's, which, by the way, her name is Elphaba. Oz the Great and Powerful, Theodora, for some reason. That's a strange choice,
right?
Elphaba, I like that. That's a good witch name. That's a great witch name,
right?
Theodora,
great, yeah.
Odd choice.
Odd choice. Yeah, Elphaba, great witch name. I've got so many like canon-wise questions almost, right? Like, because this movie starts off with like Wicked Witch of the West is dead, right?
Which is like right. Which we're past the climax of The Wizard of Oz,
right? At
this point,
picks up. Like,
we get a scene where we get to see our quartet is marching back to Oz after they've killed her,
right? So like this movie, Wicked essentially picks up where that like leaves off, right? In a way, of course. It's most of the movie really takes place in like a flashback storytelling perspective, right? Where Glinda's telling the story of like how her and Elphaba were friends in school. And so,
you know, it's Glinda, but the G is silent. I just, want to make that clear.
Glinda?
Glinda.
Also, can we talk about the fucking hair flips? So ridiculous.
So great.
Anyway,
so we'll get to Ariana Grande in a second.
Yeah, but like, so most of this Wicked is really like a flashback, right? In a way, in a story that Glinda's telling. So, and there are from The Great and Powerful, there are a lot of differences. Like,
Mm.
In The Great and Powerful, all the witches are already in Oz. In Wicked, none of them. But basically, in Wicked, Oz is already there. Oz is there the whole time. He doesn't arrive while the other witches are there, right?
Right, like it feels as though he's come from Omaha for a while now.
Right.
He's been around for a minute.
And he built the Emerald City, right? Whereas in Oz the Great and Powerful, it's already there. Like
he's inheriting.
He is
the Emerald
inheriting
City.
it, and he has to also like earn it back through a battle. So like that's like a main inconsistency. Another one that really stands out because of how important it is to Oz lore is the Yellow Brick Road. Out of all three of these films, Wicked is the only one that like tries to tell us how the Yellow Brick Road became yellow. Because
which apparently was Elphaba's doing.
Apparently it was Elphaba's doing, but really it was Glinda who suggested yellow. So really it was like Glinda who really like finalizes the Yellow Brick Road. So
she's so good.
That's like she's so good.
She's so good.
So like, you know, there's a little that seems like a big like Oz lore thing to just like decide, especially for something that's not canon. Like the Yellow Brick Road is actually Glinda created it. She created the color and all of these things. So that's just like another thing that kind of stands out. Also, the security for Oz.
That's right. Yeah, we get an explanation for this.
This is the first movie where they don't have wings yet. And so we essentially figure out how they get wings, but doesn't really fit in Oz the Great and Powerful because, of course, Oz, in Oz, before he even got to the land of Oz, they had wings. So there's like a lot of inconsistencies there, but your explanation about the canality of Wicked compared to some of these other movies kind of like speaks to the reason.
Well, really just The Wizard of Oz. I don't know if Oz the Great and Powerful is canon either. I don't think it is.
We're not sure. We hope not.
I'm like pretty confident.
But it's cool to kind of just see the differences between like how they're telling stories and like what they're deciding is important and not important. And so, yeah.
I would, as far as, arguing like the chronology of like these two movies, and like even though like from a book standpoint, neither of them are, right? But if you were trying to like create, an Oz lore in cinema, specifically cinema, it feels like Wicked is the better bridge between the two, between Oz the Great and Powerful or Wicked. It feels like Wicked does a better job of like creating a seamless like world, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's much easier to go from Wizard of Oz to Wicked than Wizard of Oz to Oz the Great and Powerful.
Especially because like there's just so many things about Oz the Great and Powerful that are they're just gonna disappoint you.
I'd love for them to remake not Oz the Great and Powerful, but like tell a different version of how the wizard got there.
Give us a different movie. Do it again.
Do it again. Because it is a cool thing to explore, and I think that there are a lot of things in that movie that are done well. But Wicked. I'm going to give some quick hits.
Okay.
Some quick hits about what we like, what we didn't like. The wizard banning like animals and that whole storyline about like animals losing their voice and things like that, like really, in my opinion, really intriguing. I loved the teacher character as well. Dillon? What was his name?
Yeah, Professor Dillon.
Professor Dillon, played by Peter Dinklage. Awesome. Great character. And of course, like that leads us to, Elphaba being a little bit more like intrigued on like what's going on with animals and wanting the wizard to grant the animals like their freedom. And then of course we find out that like, basically.
Well, I mean, that's really important for her as a character, right?
Yeah.
As a character who is ostracized and she's witnessing this group of characters that's being ostracized. It immediately endears her to them, right?
Right. Yeah. So, that's also a little heartbreaking too. Like when she, like, it's cool but heartbreaking when she reads when she can read the Grimoire, right? Like the only wizard actually who could probably.
Thank you for remembering that. I could not remember what that book was called.
It's like reads the Grimoire, like casts a spell, gives the apes wings, horrifying, especially for her because she like wants to help the animals, not like punish them. And
Hurt them, yeah.
it, and also, is it possible to cast anyone better than Goldblum as the wizard?
He was wonderful.
So good.
Thank you for transitioning here to casting. Jeff Goldblum. He's just such a fun actor, man. He's just always so fun to watch on screen. He does such whimsical and he speaks and moves with such oddities, right? That he's just a marvel in and of himself. Which isn't that his mirror counterpart's name, Dr. Marvel or something in The Wizard of Oz? That's the fortune teller.
Oh, I think so. Yeah,
it's something like, or Professor Marvel. It's something like that. In any case, doesn't matter. But yeah, the scene where he's marching through like the model of Oz, like you can tell like Goldblum's just having such a fun time with that character, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was basically done. I've already bragged about how awesome the Defying Gravity scene is at the end there, and it really just like gets you jazzed up for part 2, like, and for where we're going, because I haven't seen the Wicked play, and I didn't really want to like ruin it to see what happens next. So I'm kind of just like in limbo, waiting for the second film to come out. Thankfully, it comes out at the end of this year. They filmed it all together, apparently. So like,
yes,
we're not waiting
Wicked Part 2. Very excited for that. Just to harp on the casting just a little bit more. Can we talk about the Ariana Grande in the room? I'm going to talk about her first before I get to Cynthia Erivo. Is that how you say that? Erivo. Cynthia Erivo. Okay, so I never had anything against Ariana Grande. She just never really did it for me. I remember her on what was it, Victoria Justice's show, whatever, the Nickelodeon show forever ago. I remember her on there. I don't know. She just never did it for me ever. This movie made me a fan of Ariana Grande because, like, to me, like before this, as someone who just didn't know a lot about her, she just didn't seem like she had a lot going on. And in this movie, you can tell like this is someone who clearly cared a lot about the performance.
Yeah.
Like I mean, her character is supposed to be big and loud and like very commanding in scenes, and like Grande does such a great job of doing that she kind of steals the scene almost every time, with the exception, of course, of Defying Gravity, which is supposed to be Elphaba's big coming out, right? But yeah, just so awesome to watch her take that scene and be so fun and whimsical with it, right? You know, the little lines like here and there, the way that, you know, she does the toss, like, she brings the character to life with like all these like great like actor choices, right? Like the scene where they're doing Popular and she's hanging from the chandelier and her legs are spread, and like her legs are spread as they're circulating around Cynthia Erivo's head, and she just has to like just deal with like the awkwardness of that. Both of them like rock that scene. It's so funny.
They crushed it. I mean, they both did such a great job.
Well, that's what I was going to get to with Erivo, because like for as loud and big as Grande has to be with Galinda and then Glinda, Erivo has to be subtle but powerful, right? And like the quiet things that she does. Like the scene where they're dancing at the Oz Dust Bowl, Oz Bowl, the Dust Bowl,
whatever, the club,
and the club, right? And they turn, and like you see Elphaba's face in one moment, and then the very next moment you see it again, and just like two huge tears just coming down. Like that's incredible.
That
acting.
Scene is awesome, especially because like when she's dancing by herself, it looks so weird, but then you realize that this is a dance that's meant to be done with a partner. And then, so when...
I like that interpretation.
Yeah, when Glinda joins in, you're like, wait, this dance makes so much more sense when you've got someone to do it with. And this is like a big moment where they kind of like are becoming friends, you know? Really awesome scene to do it like that.
I'm going to wait to judge like the story of this, of Wicked, until like we get the complete, you know, package. But I will say like what sells me on this particular movie is the sisterhood of these two characters, how it gets built up, and I assume how ultimately it will get torn apart.
Right. Yeah. It's really well done, and I think that's a good idea to wait for part 2 to fully judge the full story. One quick little thing that I forgot to mention is when they get to Emerald City, there's like a reenactment or like a stage performance in the Emerald City.
Right. Oh, this is cool. Yeah.
Those are the original Wicked cast members, which is sick.
Which Idina Menzel, let it go, baby. So cool. That was so unexpected. Like even I caught that. Like sitting in the movie theater, not a big Wicked person, but like the moment Idina Menzel shows up, it's like, oh yeah, like that's how she was famous before Frozen. I forgot.
Yeah, really cool. And then of course like Chenoweth, who we're huge fans of from West Wing. So there's a couple seasons there where she's in the West Wing too.
I forgot about that. You're right.
Super random. But anyway, so that was like a cool. I love little things like that. That very fun. And yeah, I don't have. I'm trying to think. I'm looking at my notes real quick, but I do like that we got to see at the end the hot air balloon as like an escape attempt. Just because like the hot air balloon was such like a big focal point of Oz the Great and Powerful. Obviously, the movies really don't have much to compare as far as like the canality of it, but because of like the importance of how Oz gets there to the Land of Oz, that suggests that in the Wicked timeline, Oz did also come there with a hot air balloon. So
yeah. Once again, like a better seamless like connection to the Wizard of Oz than Oz the Great and Powerful.
Right.
That's a great call.
That was cool.
Yeah. Nick, as a final note before we move on from our Oz movies here, just to talk about Oz itself. What is it that you think about Oz, the Land of Oz, that people love returning to so much?
Honestly, to me it's just like the fantasy of the world and the sets. Like you've got like something like the Emerald City, like that's like insane. Like that does not exist here. Like we don't have like a city like it's all like green and emerald and like just like enchanted, like, and I think people love to have that kind of like thought and wish or like what if thought, right? On what if this was real, like how would it look? How would it be? I loved the depiction of it in Wicked. I think it was my favorite version of the three. The Emerald City, really cool. And yeah, I mean, that can be the only thing. Exploring these three movies, it actually makes me more interested for part 2 of Wicked and then maybe some other potential Oz films down the line, because it really is like a cool world to explore. There's a lot there. So
I think Wicked proves that there's an appetite for this, right?
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And you pretty much hit all the words that I would have said about this. I think it is a fantastical, whimsical place that people want to see. And you brought up that the fact that they wish it was there, and just to like expand on that just a little bit, like Oz has always been about a story about finding what your heart desires, right? And like how close it actually is to you, rather than it being in this faraway place, right? Sure. And I think that speaks to a lot of people. Certainly does here. But yeah, for Ozfest, that'll do it for now. However, there are a lot more Oz movies, as we've learned, other than Wicked Part 2. So stay tuned later this year for Ozfest Part 2 to find out what those are.
Awesome. And in the meantime, you can find us on Threads. Follow us there. We're talking about all other things that are streaming. And of course, hit that subscribe button, give us a like and a comment. Tell us what you think about the Land of Oz. And until next time,
may the review be with you.
Peace.